Welcome one, welcome all. This is the Super Spectrum here coming from South Florida. Today will be the 14th episode of the Super Spectrum. I hope you guys all enjoy it. I'm, of course, Bear Truth, joined by Jorge and my cousin Katie. We really love this movie, or at least Katie and I have spoken before that, we do love the movie, and it's going to be Bugonia. So I'll start us off with my short review, and then we'll get into the reviews of our other um, show hosts. And here we go. So, Bugonia. Um, Bugonia does the best job of capturing the nuances of the current human predicament. No other film before has been able to realistically portray and articulate the complexities of the human psyche and inclination to project its darkest regions of the unconscious onto others. Wrought with despair and delusions of grandeur, the mind's defense mechanism to alienate itself has never before been captured so masterfully on screen. This movie goes far past cinema and into the realms of philosophy. It should be cherished and studied by all serious students of life, so I couldn't want to recommend it more. It deserves a 10 out of 10.
Couldn't agree more.
Nice.
Good to know, guys. Awesome. So, who would like to go next?
I'm curious what Katie has to say about it.
I thought that was a perfect, quick little review, Mike. I pretty much agree with you. I wrote down a bunch of notes for this one.
Good.
So I didn't necessarily come up with a brief little one-off quip like you did, but I think I agree with you wholeheartedly. I would also give this movie 10 out of 10, 11 if that's possible. I pretty much didn't have any problems with it. It might be one of my favorite movies of all time now. And I agree with you. It's just so thought-provoking, and it brings so much to discuss. And it also, just me personally, it has pretty much all of my favorite things story-wise and media that I love to consume. So I think that's another reason why I appreciate it so much.
I remember how much you loved Arrival, and so this is sci-fi, and speaking about aliens, that's probably an interest of yours too. But
100%.
The psychology aspect, I know you love. So
Yes,
okay,
the psychology, the philosophy aspect, like you said, there's so much themes of nihilism and absurdism in this one, which again, all things I love in storytelling, but also just to think about in general. But we can get into more of that later, more of the specifics once we dive deep, like we always do. I love that.
Yes, we'll keep it brief here so we have time.
Gotcha. Yeah. So no notes, pretty much, like no flaws for me, like 10, 11 out of 10. Love it.
Awesome. Cool, Katie. Jorge, blow our socks off with this. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh man, I wouldn't do that to you. Yeah, I haven't had to put into words how I feel about the movie, but I will say I did really enjoy it. I think overall it's I would say it's great, and I think it is one of the most interesting releases, especially this year. I love a lot of the commentary that it has to offer, and I think everything relating to just the simplicity and the just cut through nature of the story is very entertaining. I love the performances. I think everyone in the cast is great, with maybe one exception, but we can get into that later. But yeah, I thought the unraveling plot was always interesting. I just think it's like super well put together, and yeah, I can't say that I love that. I do have some qualms with it, but I do think overall it works more than it doesn't. So I yeah, I feel very strong about it. I do think it's one of probably my favorite releases this year that I've seen so far.
I like that you brought up the unraveling aspect. The simplicity is beautiful. It's not like like super you know, big set pieces and everything like that. It was beautifully shot, and then love the performances. Can't wait to hear the performance that you didn't think went over as well as you would have hoped. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I know I said I don't have any flaws personally with the movie, but I'd love to hear what Jorge has to say because
Yeah,
maybe it's something I didn't pick up on.
right. Yeah, Jorge is very observative, and I think that I love he comes from a position of love. He's a very loving, kind person, so he's not critiquing in any sort of like way that would be negative. He's always coming at it from like you know if he thinks it's negative, or if he think it didn't come out well, I think it's coming from a place of love with him. So can't wait to hear everything he says.
I love that. It sounds all constructive, which is
Right,
what we
constructive.
want, right?
Right.
I hope so. Thank you though.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I know you really well, Jorge. I could say that all with all honesty, I think. All right, so let's how about we do this? I have a few notes. Do you guys want to hop? Yeah, so the thing is, I wrote more notes after seeing it, and I just watched it a second time before we started this review, but we were kind of crunched on time, so I didn't get to organize them, so it might sound a little bit out of order, but they're slightly ordered to where the ending is will come last. So how about we don't talk about the ending right now? We are going to start spoiler discussion and like kind of breaking down the film, or at least I like to break down the film a lot. So and we'll talk about that together. So how about I bring up the first little thing I saw?
Sounds
All
good.
right. So after telling Donnie that a third of human food is pollinated through bees, Teddy asks Donnie if he understands the scope of that, which makes Donnie frown. And so I wrote that Teddy feels so much smarter than everyone else. And this is even, kind of how humans, and especially, not all conspiracy theorists, but maybe people, you know, and would consider myself one, but it's kind of like a narcissistic tendency, which I think that sadly Teddy has grown to. It's like a superiority complex, which I think he's grown to cope. And it's not only it's not only from narcissism. I'm going to get into why he's making these delusions of like all these delusions in his head. It's not all his fault, I believe. And so, but anyways, it's a narcissistic tendency to think that you've got it all figured out, right? And that everyone else is dumb. And kind of, even though Donnie is, at some degree, differently abled when it comes to intellect. I don't think that, he's incapable of understanding, simple concepts like that. And, but the metaphor I'm kind of trying to draw is that um, Teddy represents the conspiracy theorist. Donnie represents all other people who are kind of just, kind of brainwashed, if you will, or not exactly. They are less informed when it comes to the conspiracy theories, at least. And
Could I say
so
real quick?
yeah,
I think Don, the character of Don, is also supposed to be representation of like a stand-in for the audience.
right, yeah, okay, and yeah, and that's kind of what I mean. Like the majority of audience would be more with Donnie, and so what I wrote is that he feels so much smarter than everyone, and uh, representative of Donnie being those people he's smarter than, and he is for the most part smarter than him, but he's not humble enough to see where he's wrong as well. Donnie is smarter than he thinks too, and that fact that Donnie's smart, combined with his superiority complex, which is, you know, Teddy's, leads Teddy to his own downfall, you know, partially at least. You know, it's one of the things that starts, you know, coming unraveled in his, you know, plan, you know. But anything you guys want to comment on that?
I will say that I think it's a bit muddier in terms of um, I think Donnie is supposed to kind of be the eyes and ears of the audience, just because of, you know, he's coming at it for more of a like innocent place. He's very receptive to what Teddy tells him, and you know, I think uh, I think you are right in the sense that Teddy is obviously far more knowledgeable in terms of some of the information that he's providing to Donnie, but he's also kind of a little, I don't know if egotistical, but he certainly lacks a bit of empathy towards, you know, some of the issues that are not revolving directly with what he's dealing with. So yeah, I think you kind of summarized it in a pretty like spot on way.
Thank you, George. Or thank you, Jorge. Katie actually has something that I wrote down. She said that Donnie was like the child at the dinner table, right? He's in the center while the adults are arguing. Basically, you know, one is the elite, one is the conspiracy theorists. These are the people with more knowledge, and yeah, like he's kind of like you said, observing, you know, the yeah, the
Yeah,
situation.
I was going to bring up that scene in reference to what we're talking about
Yeah.
because I think it's visually laid out so well and it's perfectly like apropos to the story and the characters with like you said that I said Don being in the middle and then Emma Stone's character and Jesse Plemons' character at each opposite end, each extreme of the table, pretty much. And I think you perfectly nailed the you perfectly hit the nail on the head with describing the character of Teddy as a narcissist, and he is kind of he does kind of the way he acts, he does kind of come across as elitist, which is funny that how it's funny juxtaposing him with a character like Michelle because she's an actual elitist, like a CEO of a major company. Okay, I
They're
want to jump ahead of you then, so I see what
they're
you're.
No, no, thank you. They're mirrors of each other. They both think that they are right.
Right.
And at the same time, yes, Michelle is a little bit more nuanced and, you know, understands what Teddy is going through, but Teddy even says he understands what they think he's going through, right?
Mhm.
So he does know the nuance. He just doesn't believe it, right? And
Right.
so not only that, Michelle even in one part shows how unnuanced she is, right? And elitist, like you said. I love that you brought that up. She says, I will beat you because I'm a winner and you're a loser. That's just life. And then I wrote,
Yes, that is something
this,
I wrote down in my notes. That line,
right.
I've
Well,
been thinking about that one in particular very
good, good,
hard.
but we could talk about it now. But she said, so what I said is, this rigid way of thinking is very black and white and reminiscent of Teddy's mentality,
Yeah.
along with that of the elite and their survival of the fittest ideology. They refuse to take into account that every circumstance is different and that one's weakness shouldn't doom them completely, or even that their idea of weakness isn't always weakness, as they would probably wrongly consider compassion as weakness in some cases where it actually is a strength. All right. So, but that's her black and white, you know, seeing the world. And, you know, like I said, it's harder to maybe see that she does that, but she does do it at certain points in the film.
That line threw me off when we first watched it. Especially after the end, which I guess we won't go into yet. But
Mhm.
that line, I feel like I was focusing on that one really hard because I guess once we can talk about it more once we get into spoilers, but
Okay.
we'll come back around to that.
Awesome. Um, um, I'll write that down with the ending that you want to bring that up here.
Yeah, I tried to. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I don't know if it was when we started recording yet. But I've been watching a lot of reviews and deep dives about this movie since Mike and I first saw it, which was about a week ago, right?
Yeah.
And my God, just the there's so much to talk about with this movie. I feel like we're not going to have enough time in just this review, but I think that's great because it'll leave people coming back to this movie for a long time.
Yes.
When I wrote down all my notes, like I tried to organize them in terms of like the narrative flow of the movie, if as much as possible. I didn't even
Right.
write down everything that I wanted to, but yeah, hopefully we can get a chance to dive in
We'll
later.
we'll yeah, we will. Jorge might need to go early, but no matter what, we'll get through all of everyone's notes. I'm just gonna I'm gonna try to breeze through mine, and then so we could continue. But so Teddy says you're smarter than everyone thinks when he's speaking to Don, right? And he's like talking down to him. He says, "I'm doing this to save you most of all." And this is what a narcissistic cult-like leader thinks of their followers and their heroic actions for the public in general. It's probably how Michelle and the elites, the CEOs, also look at their constituents or whatever. I don't know if I want to say that word, but the public or like the people below them. The
I think
followers.
constituents is the right word.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you. And anyways, keep going. So Teddy and Donnie are the ones dressed like aliens doing the abducting. So he's projected the evil he's capable of onto her. That didn't come out right, but I guess you get the gist of what I'm saying there. Um, just stop me if you guys want to comment on it. I'm going to try to run through them real quick. Teddy put meaning on something that wasn't there. He's like, I'm the only one who figured it all out. That's like a narcissistic thing. But anyways, I'm gonna delve more deeply. He puts meaning onto it to save himself from a trauma that he has. Okay, and I'm gonna really, really, really get into it. But hold on. Just some quick notes. Sorry, it's out of order. There's much more well thought out notes that are going to be interspersed through these ones that are just like one line. But here's another one liner. Teddy fails at pepper spraying her. He's okay with spraying. He's okay with spraying. Who he thinks is evil, but didn't want the bees to be sprayed, which are kind of representative of him. Just like that. Again, the double standard type thing. Um, Michelle is so much smarter than Teddy. These were things I was writing down while I was watching the movie, at least the last two, the one that I just said and the one before it. And then I, kind of figured out that they're kind of really both not as nuanced, as I would like, a fully, wise person to be. So, anyways, or at least my vision of one would be. And so, anyways, continuing on. When interrogating Michelle for the first time, Teddy says, I'm supposed to believe you're a woman? Human woman? Extra emphasis he puts on woman. And this is a reference, in my eyes at least, to a conspiracy theorist, or how conspiracy theorists call every female celebrity that they don't like a tranny, right? I've heard that serial killers hate women, and it stems from hating their mom. And this is reminiscent of Jesse's character, of course. And though he doesn't consciously hate his mom for all the psychological torture she put him through, he doesn't right or sorry.
I
He
think
he
you got
hates
it
her.
right.
Hold on. He doesn't consciously hate his mom, right? But subconsciously he has that hate, and that is why he takes this hatred and projects it onto Michelle, right? A woman that he's projected all of his mother's worst qualities on, right? So this is his way of coping with, you know, of course you don't want to hate your mother, right? And you don't want to have all of this pain towards your mother. So you make up these theories, and use it and I'm going to get into it more. It's actually laid out exactly that this is what's going on with him. I'm not exactly sure. Like projection is really the only word I can think of in psychology. I'm not good at, or I haven't delved deeply into the subject as much as I would like, but this is what he's doing. Um, Anyone want to comment on that really quick? I'm gonna talk about it in a much more. That was the. All right, yeah, I'll just keep going. So, uh, vague, vague cult leader statements come out of Teddy's mouth like everything's for a reason, Donnie. It's kind of just like like it soothes the listener, and it's self-explanatory, although it could have so much meaning and you never really fully describe what you mean. And it could be used anywhere. Anyways, I just brought that up. But and then when Michelle wakes up, she asks, is this a hospital? This frustrates Jesse. And then he says, no, this is not a hospital. Or he doesn't say it that meanly. He says, no, this is not a hospital. F it. I'm just gonna start. And he's frustrated because she's not acting like an alien would be acting if the alien had been abducted, right? Like most likely an alien's not gonna wake up from a getting poisoned or getting put under sleep and put to sleep and then wake up and say, "Is this a hospital?" No, she's gonna be like, she's gonna probably look around and like attack her, the people who are holding her captive. So anyway, um,
He was
then
probably anticipating
what?
some. He was probably anticipating something more dramatic when
Right,
when
that too. Yeah,
first came back to consciousness, But no,
right.
she did
She's acting like a human would.
right. She did act very human.
So, um, then Teddy and Dawn cheer like children right after the first time they successfully interrogate Michelle. They're like children, of course, and so they're hungry for power in a world where they've been powerless, right? So when they have her under her, successfully got her under their control, they're cheering around like children would, and that's because they're still in this child state, and that's why Teddy wants power, or what part of the reason why Teddy wants power so much is because just like a child wants power, they've not been able to have power, and so that's part of that childlike psychology of him. um and then Teddy isn't completely evil. He tries to help his injured coworker file for workers' compensation with OSHA, and he brings in honey to share with his other coworkers. His greatest fault is that he's without nuance. His worldview is black and white. He's only good and they're only bad, right? Um, so then Teddy gives the alien conspiracy book called Visions of Andromeda to the cop who essayed him as a kid to help him cope with his guilt. All right. Teddy says he thinks it will help him. Right. So because the cop is like, I feel so bad about what I did to you, man. And then Teddy goes, here, take this book. It helped me. Right. I think and so this is because Teddy thinks the book helped him deal with his own anxiety surrounding his mother. He compartmentalized the horror that she put him through by projecting that torture onto what he thinks the aliens do to everybody. All right. And then Teddy isn't evil, he's crazy. This is hammered home when the film hard cuts between the reveal of his murderous experiments with him kissing his mother in the hospital bed. He really is a tragic hero. He has been so traumatized by his mother and the babysitter cop that he could only work with the terrible cards he was given. All right. And then uh, already went into the Michelle says I'll beat you thing. Now, um, and I thought about how the mind games and seemingly social engineering experiments carried out by the elite through their corporations like Big Pharma have been echoed in the experiments that Teddy has done, which is also similar to the experimental drug that his mother was given. All right, so all those three things kind of, echo each other. And now, just on the ending. So, you guys want to talk about anything I discussed, or discuss things other than the ending in your own notes? Let's bring them up now. I think we ran through that really really well in 10 minutes, so that was good. But
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of delved into it pretty well. You touched on the points that I was thinking about too while watching it, particularly with Teddy's. I think what I like so much about his character is that there's like very, I don't know if duplicitous is the right word, but there's obviously a lot of there's a lot internally that's going on that we see glimpses of, and particularly once the relationship between him and his mother and the his old babysitter turned cop. I think those are clues into maybe his more deeper reasoning that he's not maybe owning up to, and there's obviously like a lot of repressed trauma and other things that you touched on that are clearly like bottling up. And honestly, like there is some parts of that I guess, since we're not discussing the ending yet, that I think makes me a little like I question some of the decisions for his characterization, especially after you know the conclusion of the story. But I guess we can dive into it. But yeah, I agree with you with the assessment and kind of the deeper maybe reasons for his actions in the film that I feel like he's masquerading under, also trying to be doing something for humanity and ultimately trying to help them. But yeah,
Right. And that's like the way he justifies anything bad that he sees in what he's doing, while still, getting to get out that anger that he has towards everyone, or not really towards everyone, but towards the mother, and towards, you know, um, the way that he's seen his mother was, even if he's angry towards his mother or even knows he is, he's still mad that he would probably see her more as a victim than a antagonist, and he would see the corporation as being worse off or worse than she is, and so he's really getting back at all of them, kind of through his actions, and then, like I said, while still justifying all of them, because, like you said, Jorge, he believes he's saving the world, right?
I think Teddy absolutely is a tragic character, and I think that was a brilliant point that you brought up, Mike, that he might not even be consciously aware that he hates his mother. It's probably more subconscious that I think he subconsciously knows she didn't provide for him, she didn't do her job as a mother, most likely. I think, I mean, I might be wrong here, but I think in the plot of the movie, like in the course of events of the movie, the dinner scene, the culmination of the dinner scene, the part where he finally like breaks and attacks her, goes after her, is right when she says, "You needed a mother," and she wasn't there. It was something like that. I think that was
Because
the point where that finally broke him, and he attacked her. Because
it was Katie.
okay, yeah, because people in general, introspection and self evaluation is
Mhm.
really difficult, and being
Right.
confronted with things like that of your own psyche, especially deep seated things like that, can be very um, abrupt and feel like an attack. So his reaction there is actually perfect in terms of his character.
Yes. Feel like an attack, because this is something that he's fooling himself into to not thinking, right?
Right.
He's like
He's probably in denial, again,
in
subconsciously,
denial.
probably, about it, because I feel like it in his very, like you said, very black and white view of the world. uh it's probably, to him, it probably feels like a son's job to protect and defend their mother, and stand up for their mother, even though she didn't do that. She may not have done that for him. um he sees himself as like the highest, or the he probably sees himself as the an example of humanity, right? So he has to fill that mold of being, the defender of his sick mother. So I think that was, I could talk so much about that spaghetti dinner scene on its own, because I think it's just so brilliant. It's such brilliant storytelling, and like a study of two characters. It's just so good.
Maybe yes. Well, I'm sure we'll get more into it. But the flying spaghetti monster, that's a reference to, we could say maybe. You
Oh
know,
my god, I love that. I didn't
never
even
never
think of
thought of
that.
that. But that's like the most out there conspiracy that I don't think anyone believes, but like it's like a it's kind of like a joke,
I
amongst
love
the
that.
conspiracy theorists.
I love that. I was pondering that because a movie like this, every single thing is intentional. So watching that scene, especially for the second time, I'm like, why did they choose spaghetti and meatballs?
Hmm.
you know, like he's trying to roll out the royal treatment for her at this point in the movie. Uh, so I'm like, so why did they go with that? You're probably right there, and I love it.
All right, guys. Anything you guys want to talk about before we talk about the ending? Go, whatever, everything.
Um, I guess I did want to dive. You, most of my issues with the film don't really have to do with the filmmaking, and I think Katie brought up actually a great point. That Dickerson is fantastic, and I guess like I would want to just touch on that for a second. There is a lot of like great, uh, just like bottled tension, and I think like that's like kind of like one of those combination moments. And yeah, I think the pacing is so well constructed. Like it's so tightly edited. I feel like honestly everything that's relating to or sorry, not relating, but I think everything that's shown in the film is essential, and there's really nothing that you can cut out. Like it's very tightly put together, and I have to commend like the editing, particularly, and the performances. Like I feel like I think the fact that you can dive so much psychologically into the characters and the complexities, particularly with like Teddy, I think that's just like a showcase of like what you were mentioning with the juxtaposition between like the editing, like finding that information, and then Teddy with his mom and things like that. Like that's just commendable from a technical perspective, and also just like how layered the performances are. And there's obviously a lot of thought into putting how they're representing their emotions, and kind of just like letting those things show in those instances. So yeah, just want to touch on that because I do think like your comment made me kind of want to mention that, as I do think it's like a great showcase for just how well constructed everything is.
Good, George. Yeah. Katie, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I can bring up a few things.
Okay.
Um, Two things that I really appreciate about the movie, just in general, and in terms of, I guess, a filmmaking perspective, are the acting, which Mike touched on a little bit already. But oh my God, the performances in this movie are incredible. Particularly Emma Stone, she has a very complex role to play here, and I, I love pretty much her entire performance throughout the entire movie. She does a very good job at playing the character kind of ambiguously, because at least for me, I just knew the general premise of the movie going into it, but the whole time, I'm sitting there watching her being like, is she really an alien or not? Like she walks the line so well, and I think that's just incredibly commendable in terms of acting. Um and I think the second standout of this film is Teddy, the our protagonist. Um, that actor, I'm sure we're aware that he is a powerhouse actor as well, and he kind of he kind of toes the line of being like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to word it, but like he does a very good job of walking the line between sympathetic and crazy or evil. You know what I'm saying? like he does a very good job of playing it a little bit both, because the whole time, yes, he kidnaps someone, he's torturing them, he's doing horrendous things, but he also, you can tell, like, at least in his mind, his character's mind, it's coming from a place of good intentions. And his character, as we learn throughout the movie, has gone through so much trauma. You can't help but feel bad for him, you know. And as the course of the movie goes on, his whole character is really a testament to how trauma can simply just break a person, you know, break their psyche and make them do the most unspeakable things. And
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Well, no, you finish, Bub. I don't mind.
I wanted to touch on my next point of the movie, but if you want to comment about the acting, go for it.
Well, yeah, I thought it was all done really well, exactly like you said, with Emma. You know, especially when she has that like, I don't think it's fully believable that someone would eloquently and gracefully be able to deliver the alien conspiracy that she comes up with shortly while he's out unaliving the cop, and then in that short period of time after Don had just unalived himself, right? I don't think she would have been able to come up with an idea that quickly, or maybe she was during the time while she was sleeping there, but then delivering it that well, that I could see it. It would just be a very strong-willed person, which an elite CEO with all the training she's going through, I'm sure could, especially because we see her, uh, having a lot to do, a lot of, she records advertisements and things going out to, and we see how smart she is when she's telling her secretary how to word the way that they should explain the new policy, right? And
Mhm.
so she is a genius. This woman is a genius. The character is a genius, and so I don't put it past her. But when she does it that well, it also helps. Like the idea that, and I don't, it's not my belief, but I think it's left ambiguously for a reason. That she could be an alien, right? But
Yeah,
and it is a beautiful description that she gives, but I think it's more of like when she's talking about this is why the aliens did it, it's like more like this is why she justifies the CEOs and the elitists doing what they're doing, right?
yeah,
To save the world, right?
and
But
this story is actually perfect with the analogy of, like, see, they kind of portray her character as, even disregarding his conspiracy of that it's, if she's an alien, they portray her as, or they portray her character, but I guess she's kind of a analog for just CEOs, high power, those type of people in general. They feel like aliens because they're, with the separation of class in modern society, she she a character like her, she cannot relate to characters like Teddy and Don really at all. So she kind of is an alien because their world is so separate from the masses in general anyway.
right. Yes, what's your next point, Bub?
Um, the next thing I wanted to talk about was the music. I was floored by the music in this movie.
Right.
One thing I found out is that the the composer who made the score actually was only given like a minimal amount, I guess, of information when composing the music for this movie. Uh, so there was kind of a disconnect between the visuals and the direction overall and the music. Like, it almost feels like on first watch the music doesn't really match with the movie itself. But I think that I appreciated that, and I think actually it does match beautifully. Uh, I think one of the things I pointed out to you right after we finished our first watch of the movie was how outstanding the score was, and how the grandioseness, if that's a word, of some of the score and soundtrack is such a stark contrast to the visual imagery that's going on screen. Like, particularly the scene where Teddy's riding his bike to work. Like, it's such a simple visual of just a guy riding his bike, on the road. And there's this epic musical soundtrack going on. To me, it felt like maybe that's how he feels in his head, you know, because he's the main character. He sees himself as like the savior of humanity, right? So he feels like even just doing the most mundane things that, because he's the main character, he's the center of everything. So that, that's probably how he feels in his head, the grandiose epic soundtrack, even of him just doing the most mundane things. I felt a similar vibe with Michelle's character, that especially mainly towards the beginning, I was getting with the soundtrack, I was getting kind of Jaws vibes. With it was just a simple shot of her, walking into her office, and there's just this low repetitive note going on. It felt very villainous and creature feature, uh theme, which again, super appropriate, loved. Also, just a little comment on more on the visuals. When we first saw the movie, that scene where she's recording the diversity training, uh they're in an office of like all glass walls. And to me, that gave, for those who don't know, I have reptiles as pets. So that was giving me like reptile enclosure vibes, and like almost a zoo kind of feel, with her being in this room surrounded entirely by glass, which this kind of conspiracy of the CEO character being like this reptilian, alien, if you want to say. I thought that was just so appropriate. Um, and back to what you were saying. Sorry, I'm going a little bit all over the place, but I had just so much I wanted to say. Going back to what you said about towards the beginning about um, Teddy's character being very much like a cult leader. I think the parallels between Teddy's character and Michelle's character are just insane, because yeah, he kind of just, you know, shoots out these platitudes to Don as he's, manipulating him into doing this with him, which is parallels that scene with Michelle doing the diversity training. It's just they're just parroting empty platitudes to get people to listen to them. So that's just another example of how these characters are maybe more alike than they are not, which again is another fascinating aspect of this movie. Uh, yeah, I think that's that's the majority of what I wanted to say for this, at least at this point.
Okay. We could definitely get into the ending. Jorge, you ready? You
A
want to
bit.
say something?
I'm so
Pop it. All right.
ready. No,
All
I'm
right.
good.
No. So this is so my ending discussion really is me trying to show how it is an artistic it was an artistic vision, and so didn't really happen, right? I think the most literal way of showing that might be how, she is in a she wakes up in she goes into a coma, so she could be dreaming about this, or while his head is off of his shoulders, right, he can now be having this vision in the short amount of time before he goes unconscious or to the other side, right? They say, or however, like the DMT trip you have when you pass away. So anyways, but to me it's more artistic than that. It's those were left in there purposefully to add to the discussion, right? But to me, it's all laid out that this movie isn't all literally happening. It all starts being laid out in one scene, and I'll point you guys towards it. So the first fantastical occurrence, which does not happen, but in Teddy, or it's a artistic way of showing what's going on in the minds of the characters, right? This first fantastical occurrence is Teddy's mom floating, almost as if she's being taken away from her son and abducted by aliens, right? which is how he later copes with the fact that it was um, not her and her drug habit that took her away from him, right? It was the aliens, right? Or the CEOs who are aliens, right? So this is the artistic representation of that idea in his mind, right? And this scene's artistic representation of psychosis is then immediately followed up by the film's second fantastical piece of imagery, that of the top-down view of the flat Earth, although the viewer cannot easily see or tell that it is flat at this point, right? And so this flat Earth, right, is also another hint at no, the director doesn't think the Earth is flat. The director doesn't think the mom's levitating. The director doesn't think or isn't trying to tell you that she's really an alien. It's just playing into this fantastical. But there's other reasons, later on that I'll discuss. But basically, if you leave an ambiguous ending like this, especially one that has fantastic imagery like the aliens, right? The ambiguity is going to lead to more discussion, argument over the film, which will bring eyes to the film and thought towards the film, which of course the director would like because he's an artist and wants people to think about these concepts in his mind, right? But if it's fantastical, right, it's really going to attract these conspiracy theorists, right, who are very sadly in a lot of ways deceived and fall into the same things as Teddy. And so maybe they're just drawn in because someone tells them, hey, this movie's got aliens in it, you're gonna love it, right? It's all to do with what we think, like it believes what we think, right? And then they go and watch the film and maybe seeds are planted of this Teddy character is a lot like me, and what if he's wrong? Like I think this is more of what I'm getting at. But
Could I just
you
interject,
guys
Mike?
go ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just wanted to interject really quick about um, your perspective here, because when we first left the movie and you said to me like she's not really an alien, that part didn't really happen. I was very confused because I can be kind of dense about stuff, even though I love diving deep into stories in general, but I don't necessarily pick up on stuff right away, and that's why I like to rewatch movies and reconsume things a lot. Um, so I was just following the narrative of of the story very literally. So at the end, I still love it. And it ultimately doesn't matter to me whether it's true or not. Either way, I love both interpretations uh, about whether the ending did really happen or not. But I'm appreciating your perspective on this a lot more now, especially after a second watch. Because I agree with you that with that fantastical imagery of the mother floating off, I didn't think of that that point in particular. But one thing I did notice about that scene was when she's like laying in the bathtub and talking with Teddy the first time that we see, she's got these comically large needles coming out all over her body. And I thought like, oh, that's just a mental, exaggeration that stand out in Teddy's head because that's probably how he saw it. So the needles probably weren't actually that big or that, you know, outlandish and exaggerated. It's just in his head because this is clearly a memory of his.
And
But
that's technically the first fantastical imagery. Those
right,
big
right.
needles, right?
Right. So, but I didn't, for some reason, I just didn't connect in my head that it also applies to her floating like that. So I'm leaning more now towards with what you said, thinking that the end is just, an analogy or that it didn't happen, literally in terms of the plot because of that fantastical imagery. And I think the end, if you watch this movie all the way to the end, at least this is how I came out of it, feeling very thrown by the end, but in the best way. Like I loved it. So I'm sorry to interrupt you for that, but I just wanted to
No, I'm happy. You help make it a better point, and yeah,
thank you.
you're welcome. Jorge, you want to comment on that? I'm going to speak more about the ending and this evidence, but if you want to go.
Sure. Yeah. I love everything that you guys have said so far. I think Katie touched on some good points too. Yeah, I think um, going off of that, I am a bit conflicted whether it's supposed to be, im- um, if it's supposed to be left up to interpretation. I think part of the reason the absurdity works is because you're almost expecting it not to be that, but then it turns out that it is. And I think there is supposed to be kind of uh, like a there's a bit of dark humor in that because this whole time you're almost convinced that it's not possible that this person's I think for the longest part you're supposed to be doubting Teddy because everything about his assessments and the exaggeration of the details is just like the hair thing and then how that comes back, and that's like their way of kind of like communicating and all that stuff. So those seeds that you for given how you've grown to um know of him and his trauma, it's almost like, yeah, it's just like a crazy person that is having a hard time reconciling, is that the right word? No,
Reconciling.
reconciling, thank you, with his own kind of issues, and it kind of morphed into this idea that that there's the existence of a higher life, and that he's trying to do the right thing for humanity. So, but then it turns out that it's real, and I guess I'm a bit conflicted on that because I don't know if the analogy still works if everything that he says is like the true, because I think for the most part you're supposed to kind of question like why this is horrible. Like he like tortures her, and like he you know very much loses composure, even though he's like saying, "Oh, we need to be calm about this," and him compared to his cousin like just loses it at multiple times. So the fact that he is proven right and that she is an alien and all that, like I don't know if that is, to me at least, I don't want to say responsible, but it's almost justifying everything that he did because it turns out to be true. And I'm not sure, maybe that's just the way I'm looking at it, but I'm just, yeah, I kind of wanted to bring that up because I'm a bit confused over what it's exactly trying to get at with, that type of subversion of expectations, I guess.
Well, I like that you said humor, dark humor, right? It's an artistic joke, is how I stated it in a way. And so, but it is art, right? It's not math. In math, 1 plus 1 is 2, right? And that's logic, right? But we're in dream logic territory. This is art, right? So in the analogy to the movie, Michelle turning into an alien at the end of the movie, right? That's not 1 plus 1. That's that it doesn't work like that, right? It doesn't mean that she equals 2 or that she is an alien, right? It is an artistic vision, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so we take it too literally sometimes, I think. But I think he does want you to, at least have the idea, unless he would have just pulled out and said, and it was a dream, or he's allowing, for discussion, and wants you, and like things that Katie said, or things that you just related to and made me think of what Katie said, right? That actually helped prove that he might actually be right, right? Like I wrote this down, something Katie said, I think the first time we watched it, or I know, since the first time we watched it, it might have been the second day or when we were discussing it after, but she goes, um Michelle says she's the daughter of the emperor, but she's actually the emperor once we go to the alien world, right? And so she's deceiving him, right? And so she might actually be an alien, right? If she's right, so like there's these little things that like they could be explained in many different ways, right? That it's just art or that it is, you know, literal, but it's what makes the film so beautiful is that it can attract so many people, and no one's going to be completely right, and so the argument and the discussion will just keep going on and on forever.
Yeah, that's the brilliant thing about ambiguous endings like this. And like I said, I didn't initially see it as ambiguous at all because I was following the literal plot. But I think Jorge brought something a really interesting point to the table. There's a lot to unpack about Teddy being right all along in terms of if we go with just a literal plot. The ramifications of a character like Teddy ultimately being right about pretty much everything, oh my god, opens up like a whole can of worms basically to discuss, because the whole movie, and this is another thing I wanted to touch on, that there's a little seed of doubt the entire movie right up until that scene where she emerges into the spaceship, that whether she's actually an alien or not. I first saw clear proof that she was an alien when she discovers, the horrendous things that Teddy's done. She's free at this point. She's free to escape, I think. Well, I guess she's still trapped in the basement in general. What were you going to say, Bob? He's muted. He's trying to unmute.
No, I think that I thought of that too. And I was
Mhm.
like, wait, why isn't she just leaving? And no,
Right.
there's a lock on the garage or the
Right.
basement,
So
right?
you're right. So the only reason she discovers that room is because she thinks it's a way out. So yeah, I guess I had thought at that point she was free to go, but she chose to stay because she asked, well, as soon as he comes back, she goes, "How many of them were Andromedans?" But no, I guess she was still trapped at that point, so she couldn't have just left. Uh, because that one scene, I guess I didn't realize, but that one scene, completely changed my interpretation of the movie because I thought, oh, she's actually an alien because she's free to go, but she chose to stay. But no, she was trapped. I'm only just now realizing she was still trapped. So, but either way,
The
anyway,
way the filmmaker made the film, he would never allow for one thing to just be complete proof, definite one part of the film, the one scene, he
right.
would never allow for there to be one definitive answer,
Well,
proof.
there's arguably another scene that could undoubtedly prove one way or the other if she actually is an alien. The scene where Teddy's torturing her with the electrodes on her head. This is something I think we also talked about, Mike, where this was something we'd have to like look up, like how much electricity can the human body actually sustain you know, before just being fried and being killed.
And that's where he goes, I'm sorry, and I read the code that you are actually a royal, so I must bow to your bloodline. And I was just like, but that helps
Yeah,
the argument that like, okay, like he knows what he's talking about, like
yeah, and
something like that.
that scene too. On a second watch, I noticed that I didn't catch the first time, but he says the output has never gone that high before, and Don goes before, so that was a clear cut, admission that he has done this kind of experimentation previously. It was such a quick thing. I didn't catch that or notice it on the first watch, but go ahead,
Well,
Mike.
I thought about that too, and the thing is that she goes through defense training, right? She's a fighter, right? She pushes her body to the limit. She pushes her mind to the limit. And if you really, they say the person with the best reason for fighting is who's going to win the fight, not the best fighter, right? And so if she really, really wants to live, right, because she has a lot to live for, right? She's gonna, mind over matter, it's gonna lean and help her. Of course, it could also, be just that she's an alien and blah blah blah. But who knows? Who really knows? We can't know.
Right.
But
And even her character just being a human CEO of a massive corporation, in her training, she may have actually prepared for that exact scenario, being kidnapped and tortured. I'm pretty sure
maybe.
that the CIA and FBI have specific training that they take to survive and get through torture. So like she might have even had
Fair,
it
fair.
herself, you know?
Right, because she's the number one CEO in the world, and she's the first
Right.
woman like this. So yeah, yeah. You know, it's I was almost being limited with my idea, but I could see where you're coming from. You know, especially with the way that she says, you know, everyone's going to be looking for me. It's going to be like a governor was abducted, but worse.
Right.
All right. So, so all right. Okay. All right. So I'll just, you know, pick up back on there the couple things with the ending argument. For it being so the argument for the ending being an artistic joke and maybe more put there for discussion, right? Um like I said, the flat earth revealed, right? Like pretty sure the author or the director doesn't also think that the earth is literally flat. So maybe he's also saying that this literal interpretation of the ending of the film, her being an alien, doesn't have to also be real.
That
Um,
that imagery, sorry, just real quick,
mhm.
that imagery of the flat earth during those transition slides, that might be my one issue with the movie. Because I can appreciate it, but you know, watching it, I was kind of like the flat earth imagery, it's a little bit too on the nose, you know what I mean? But
I think it helps make the film ten times better.
it does drive the ultimate point home, I
Yeah.
think. But
Well, it's just like a mind bender, you know, like it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know. But anyways,
But I think it was mainly used for comedic effect, to be honest, especially the
there you go.
last one where you find because I think at first because it kind of uh, transitions from the camera viewing it from above, and then we finally once it shifts, you finally realize, oh, it's a flat Earth. You
The day
know,
of the eclipse, yeah.
the last frame I think was mostly for comedic effect. At least that's how I saw it because I think I laughed when we finally saw that it was a flat Earth.
Right. No, I did too. Yeah. Um, so not everything in the film is meant to be taken seriously. Some of it is a joke. He's playing into the absurdity of the situation and ideas of conspiracy theorists. Um, and then I go on, you know, art always isn't logical, like I said before. So the literal interpretation isn't always the most valid. And it's not math. 1 plus 1 doesn't always equal 2, right? So just because the same character in the ending went to an alien world doesn't mean that it was the character going to an alien world. It's art, a movie, all right? And you know, all art works like this in the same way. You know, there's going to be symbolism, metaphor sprinkled throughout, okay? And so now the went spoke about that. All right. Now Teddy says they track it, you know, referring to Michelle. You know, he talks about her like it because he's trying to alienate himself from treating her like a real human. He goes, they track it remotely. And if she's really an alien, why don't the aliens save her if they track her remotely? But then, like Jorge had said, um, uh, you know, it's because they track her through the hair, and so that's not attached anymore. But you know, she still has a little bit of the hair. Maybe it needs to be long so the energy can be received, or blah blah blah, or you know. Anyways, but so and now, like I was saying before, there's no better way to get the fringe people to watch this film than to make the ending have real aliens, or at least, you know, seemingly so, right? Much of this movie's dialogue is important to hear as it can help us reflect. The director wants people to see it and discuss it, especially the fringe people. So he makes that alien ending, just like how Michelle leans into the alien narrative of the fringe character so that she could get him to listen to her, right? So just like how Michelle is getting I thought this was fractal. Just like Michelle is getting Jesse Plemons to listen to what and do what she wants, right? She does that by leaning into that alien narrative. This is like the director leaning into the alien perspective idea to get, you know, the people to come and listen to him, right? And to believe what, you know, he sees, you know,
Uh,
right?
can I mention something real quick before you go on,
Of
Mike?
course. Of course.
Maybe should have mentioned this a little bit earlier in the review, but I actually found out that I don't know if you guys were aware of this, but this movie Bugonia is actually a remake of a South Korean movie. Uh, so I haven't seen that original film. It's definitely on my list to watch, but so I don't know how the narrative of that one goes. I know there's some distinct differences, of course, between Begonia and that movie. Uh, but I can't say for certain about the ending for the with the big reveal of the aliens. So
No. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I want to see it too, but yeah, I
it's
had
called
seen
Save
that
the
or
Green Planet, which I just love that.
what's it called?
Save the Green Planet.
Oh, that's a beautiful name. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
love it.
can't wait to see that film. Speaking of the title of the film or speaking of the movie, maybe in a more, like objective way, the film being named Begonia, Katie pointed this out to me. She said, "You notice how it's spelled differently, spelled incorrectly? Might that be the true name of the alien species, right? As it is a different spelling and spelled incorrectly, like there might, that she was thinking that might be instead of Andromedans, right? Of course, that's not what they're going to call themselves, right? Maybe they call themselves Begonians or like where they come from is Begonia.
I was also thinking maybe it could be like like the aliens term for our planet.
Okay,
I
right.
think
Okay.
that's
Yeah, I
something
didn't know
the
what you meant.
director said himself. He chose to title the movie Begonia because this is something else I've also looked up. It actually is a word that originates in Latin and it has its own meaning. However, I can tell you about that in a second, but he also did mention he picked this because of the meaning, but also because it kind of sounds like a alien word for and maybe like the name for a planet. Um, but the meaning of the actual word begonia is uh, it's the name of a ancient Greek, I think, ritual where they believed that the dead body of an ox or a cow, if you do it in a certain way, I think without spilling any blood, it would generate bees or cause bees to come to swarm. So
Yeah.
and that's very appropriate for this movie. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, there you go. Right. And they're probably trying to get the bees to pollinate their flowers, right?
Mhm.
And so that's like the killing, and he has a movie called The Killing of the Sacred Deer. Okay. And
Don't spoil that, please,
let's
because I am going to be watching. I haven't watched any of the other movies from this director, but I definitely will.
all right. How about we do um if we could wrap up everything into 5 minutes, that'd be great. I know Jorge needs to go probably within that time frame. If you feel comfortable, Katie, that's I just want to bring up the two things that you guys said, and if not, then we'll continue after Jorge. But one thing I wanted to hear Jorge go into more is how the ending line, no, was he questions the character in relation with the conclusion. I think Teddy, you
I'm,
were talking about Jorge, or if you want to talk about something different, go ahead, Jorge. I know you have a short
I'm
amount of time,
perfectly
but
fine to yield to you guys for the rest of this because I know Jorge is on a time crunch, and I definitely want to hear what he has to say. And I know I've already talked a lot in this one, so go for it, you guys.
all right, I'm done. But
Yeah. Oh, and by any means, like if you guys want to keep talking, like you can do it without me. But yeah, I guess because also the thing I'm conflicted with at the ending is Emma Stone's character. I'm sorry, what was her name again? Do you remember?
Michelle.
Michelle.
Michelle,
Yeah. The I guess if we were to take the ending at face value, when they do decide to kind of proceed with the plans and kind of destroy all of humanity, or however that plays out. It's been a minute since I saw it. It does seem to. I think particularly with like that ending montage and also her reaction to it, like she seems like almost regretful of the whole thing, and I don't know how well that contrasts with her, kind of fighting, or once Jesse Plemons' character attacks her, and then that thing that I think you guys mentioned, where she's like, "I'm a winner, you're a loser," and that characterization doesn't almost seem to match. I don't know if that's maybe on purpose. I guess to your point, Mike, like it's not like the film can be, uh, it's not something that can only be read one way. But like I said, I think to me, part of the reason it works is because she is an alien, and if we were to take that, then I feel like there's a lot of just conflicted character choices that kind of not impede that, but like almost make me think like, is there maybe something else that's kind of being alluded to, or it's just there's a lot of like kind of things about it that I'm not 100% match perfectly, which
I
is
can
why.
comment on that
Yeah,
one real quick.
go ahead.
Because like I said earlier, I wrestled with that line. I feel like for a while that was something I thought about probably the most in terms of the whole movie. Um, because you're right, it didn't seem to match with her character, especially if we go with the literal narrative of the plot, with her actually being an alien and the empress of the aliens at that. Because she says, "You can't beat me because you're a loser and I'm a winner, and that's fucking life," something like that. Sorry, maybe you should have censored me. I should have been censored, but and that's such a human thing to say. It's very childlike, childish, and immature. Um, but I kind of, I especially on a second watch, I kind of saw that as it's like she's kind of devolving, just living amongst
She's
us.
she's at a breaking point too. She's under
Yeah,
an immense amount of stress, and I don't think she would later on, if we brought up like, hey, do you really think of the world that black and white? She would have, to me at least, that character would be like, no, no, I don't. And later on, she says, I understand you. To Teddy, right? She says, no, I understand, Teddy. I understand, and she really does. She understands where Teddy's coming from. Um,
so
yeah,
it's kind of like her breaking down and almost stooping down to our level. She basically says as much herself later on in the movie, where she says, I've noticed myself changing and becoming more human the longer I've lived here," something like that. So
right, right,
yeah,
right, right.
even though that's that line, that's that moment in the movie in particular, I think through a lot of people, it was again very intentional, and I think it was brilliant.
Okay. Now, real quick, with Bugonia, the title, I didn't know this, right? And Katie didn't know that he had thought about it as an alien when she told me as we were in the parking lot leaving the movie for the first time. So it was very, very cool that Katie knew that or like literally had the same idea in her head, like, oh, this sounds kind of like an alien, right? Alien planet, right? Which, if I'm hearing you right, like that's what he later on said in an interview that you watched, right? Okay,
Yes,
so, but then he also described, like you said, what Bugonia meant, right? And in Latin, right? And it's a so if we're going, and if Katie's memory is correct, right, it is a ritual. I'll briefly explain it again. It's a ritual that the ancient Greeks used to do, where they would slaughter a bull, and as long as no blood touched the ground, there would be the bees coming to swarm. And now this goes into my interpretation, but I think that's something that they would want, right? She didn't say that, but I think we're guessing that they want the bees to swarm so that obviously, if they understood, this is how we get more crops, right? Maybe they observed that through, and who knows how scientifically smart they were, but like they observed, okay, more bees, better for us, right? So now this idea, real quick, I don't want to go crazy, but why this relates to the film, right, and why you would choose it, right, is that humans have this barbaric idea of spirituality where they think this physical thing is going to make the spiritual help them, right? So they think, hey, we'll kill the bull, sacrifice it, right? And we'll even either A, make sure it's not dirty, right? With the blood not being spilt, or B, we won't waste the blood. I'm not exactly sure how they were looking at it, how they thought that was more kosher for them, right? So they're thinking that we'll sacrifice this bull, right? And then it'll or do it in either a clean way or a good way, and then it'll give us this good thing, right? But their logic is ridiculous, because just like the people in this film, because you're killing a bull. The bull is like, like the first off, like the sacrifice ain't gonna do shit. Excuse me, but also you're slaughtering a bull to do that. Like, what does that have? What is, like, this is a terrible thing. Why would God want that? And then,
It's
of
such
course,
a
later on in
perfect.
the Bible and Jesus, he's like, no, the slaughtering. I don't ask for sacrifice. I ask for mercy. You
It's such
know,
a perfect analogy or allegory for the movie
right?
itself too, because it's
Right?
like,
Because they think this crazy stuff is gonna.
right, it's like
Oh,
correlation does not equal causation,
there you go. Thank you,
which is
Katie. There,
basically like the plot of the
high five.
movie. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So that's all I want to say, folks. Everyone else satisfied?
I don't know if Jorge had more to say, but go for it.
No. I think Mike, honestly, that was great. I think that kind of makes a lot of sense. I feel like that does help contextualize things a bit better. And yeah, I I still I still need to kind of process that a bit more, but yeah, like I said, overall, I think the film is great, and I love everything it has to say. I love the commentary. The characters are super interesting. The plot is riveting, and yeah, I had a great time with it, and yeah, I can't wait to watch it again. Hopefully.
Did you have any other issues you wanted to talk about?
Oh, the one thing, yeah. Uh, the cop character, which I believe is played by Stab from I don't know if you guys are familiar with the
Stavos something. He's a famous
Stavos.
comedian.
Yeah, yeah.
Stavos. Whatever.
He is the one performance in the film I wasn't really into, and just because this might just be a me thing, because I know his work and I'm very familiar with him, so seeing him was kind of like distracting, and I just the whole time was just like, oh my god, he's that Stab. He's just like I couldn't like fully buy him into that role. But again, that might just be a me thing. That's literally like the only other big complaint I have. But yeah.
I think I agree with you there. I'm not familiar with the guy myself, but I heard. I think you guys mentioned how he essayed Teddy in the past. That was something that was added into the movie. And to me, that part did throw me off too, and his character in general, I suppose. They probably just needed to add in, some form of conflict during an additional outside form of conflict into the storyline with him being a cop. However, I've seen everyone say that, oh, Teddy, it was revealed Teddy was SA'd by this cop character. He doesn't actually explicitly say that. He just says, I'm sorry for what I did to you. So it's left ambiguous, and
Exactly. And so it's like the film as well is left ambiguous.
yeah,
But
so we don't
we
know
could really,
for sure if it was essay, it could have been something else. I
yeah,
prefer to think of it as I prefer to think of it as maybe it was something else, because I don't know, to me essay, that just seems like such a easy cop out, and it's kind of like a hat on a hat. Like Teddy already went through so much, and now we have to add the fact that he was essayed by his babysitter on top of it. Like that's kind of
well, I think it makes it more believable because, we all know people who grew up with not the best parents, right? And then,
mhm,
but like, do we know people who are also SA'd as a child? Like, but
true.
not to get stuck on it. Let's not get stuck on it because, like we said, it's ambiguous. It doesn't matter, or
Yeah,
it doesn't fully matter. But here's the thing.
right.
I was thinking, I haven't seen him literally in anything else. Maybe in like a small like clip here or there of like his interviews. I thought he was very good, and believable. But
For
and
sure.
there could also be an aspect where he had a traumatic childhood, maybe even in the way that his character is playing what he did, right? So maybe he was also SA'd, and people in the industry know this and chose him specifically because of this. We know this is done in the film industry because they will choose people who have gone through the same things or are going through currently. This is literally done in Eyes Wide Shut. He Stanley Kubrick chose these actors, Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, because they're argumentative already and in a relationship. And so, but you choose the people who would like literally have dealt with it themselves, and maybe it makes it more believable. But anyways, That's a tinfoil hat thing that
No,
I'm
I think that's
I'm
definitely a valuable point. Yeah, I guess we can move on from this point, but I guess
okay.
that is another one of my small gripes about the movie is I kind of feel like, oh, Teddy was being essayed. I feel like it was a little bit unnecessary, but like Mike said, it ultimately doesn't really matter, because also something else I wanted to mention is like it is believable that uh that cop babysitter character could have essayed Teddy, um because I think too, like stuff, problems like everything Teddy's been through tend to compound on top of each other, and cycles perpetuate of trauma, things like that. Not to say that it was like his fault that this happened, but like um with Teddy being in a neglectful situation with his mother, he could have been perfectly at risk of having being taken advantage of by someone else.
Especially where there's no father in the picture, right? The Teddy is
Right.
more okay to go with, like, hey, this is the only adult attention, male attention I get, so I'm just not even gonna. And that's why he didn't do anything about it later on in his life.
That's a
Although,
good
of course, he
point.
does in the film. But really quick, I just wanted to clarify. I used the eyes wide shut thing as an example. It's not a perfect example because I'm not exactly sure if they were already known to be an argumentative couple within the industry, right?
I
But
haven't seen that one.
maybe Stanley did. What?
I haven't seen that movie.
No.
I don't know.
Okay. But well, the people who know, yes, they're gonna understand at least where I was coming from a little bit because that's a relationship in the film and also in real life. Okay. So at least it's somehow representative of what I was the idea I was trying to put forward. So, anyways, I'm gonna cut it there. How about that, guys? Everyone good? Everyone happy? All
Yeah,
right. I think this was definitely the best review yet. So,
I think
uh,
this is one for the ages. It was such a good one.
good, good guys, good Katie. I think I'm very happy with how it turned out, guys, and I appreciate you guys. So,
I know we kind of went all over the place a little bit, but I don't think that's out of
yeah.
character for
Well,
this movie in particular.
there you go. Yeah.
So I think we nailed it. Good
Yeah,
job.
no, that is the one gripe I would say is that my notes weren't as prepared as they usually are. So hopefully the people will understand that and don't see it as representative of every episode. But they'll just have to see for themselves and watch the other episodes to understand that, what I just said is true. So let's end it there. Love you guys. Thank you so much. You
Thanks for
know,
having me again.
Yep. How about Wicked 2 for the next review? I know
Oh,
that
hell
Katie's in it.
yeah.
Look at her hair. Katie loves Wicked, right? So, and so do I. All
Green.
right.
Pink goes good
We
with
love the
green.
Wizard. What did you say, Katie?
I just said pink goes good with green.
Oh, okay. So, all right. Let's look forward to it. So, I'll see you guys later. Everyone, thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Have a
Thanks for
good
having
day.
me.
Thank you guys. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.